Hello and thank you for stopping by. Today I will not only show you how to make pizza dough without a stand mixer, but how to freeze the dough for later, and for those busy weeknights, I'll show you how to make frozen pizza so you can finally have one conveniently tucked in the freezer with your favorite toppings. So first things first, let's make the dough. What you need for it is some olive oil, sugar, flour, salt and yeast. This is instant yeast, so it doesn't need you to rehydrate it to activate it. This means you can add it directly to the flour. However, for this video, I'll show you how it will look like when you activate yeast in the water. Let's start by activating the yeast. Add sugar to the water, followed by the yeast. Stir and let that sit for about 5 minutes or until it turns frothy. This is what it looks like once it's activated. So just add it to the flour as well as the olive oil and mix until it forms a shaggy dough. Cover and let it rest for about 5 minutes. This will give the flour time to absorb the water, which will make it a little easier to knead than if we were to do so immediately. Okay, time to knead. A dough scraper is useful but not necessary. So tip the dough onto your working surface. You should ideally not need any more flour during this process, but expect the dough to be slightly wet when you start. It gets easier to handle as you go along with it. So lightly lather your hands with some olive oil and let's get to kneading. Add the salt to the dough. Press and fold it in. Then you need to stretch the dough. How I do this is by holding down part of the dough with my less dominant hand and stretching it by pressing it in a smudging motion across the working surface. Then I grab it and I pull it back to repeat the process again. You could also switch things a little by holding a firm grip on the dough, slapping it onto the counter and dragging it in a smudging motion toward you, then stretch it upwards and slap it back onto the counter. Repeat this for a few minutes. I will admit that it can get a little frustrating if you're doing this for the first time, but after a couple of minutes, the dough will become less and less sticky, as you can already tell. It should come together in about 10 minutes. Your end result should be a smooth dough with resistance and springs back when pressed. You can already see some air bubbles. The dough seems ready, but to test it, before letting it proof, we will perform the window pane test, which you will do by taking some dough and stretching it as far apart as you can. It should be elastic, so elastic that it doesn't break the minute you start pulling. And if it has formed quite a bit of gluten, it should stretch so far apart that you can see the silhouette of your fingers through it. To make things easier for you while performing the window pane test, I suggest that you wet your hands with some water or just lightly oil your hands with some olive oil. It's much better to do so than to do the window pane test with dry hands, because then it could get a little sticky. Shape the dough into a round ball by tucking it into itself. Lightly oil a bowl and tip the dough into it, covered with cling film to proof in a drought-free space. How long it takes to rise will also depend on the temperature of your kitchen or where you choose to leave the dough. The warmer the environment, the faster the dough will proof. If it is cold where you are, try leaving the dough in an oven with the lights on. But this is only for when you want to use the dough on the same day. Alternatively, and this is what I usually do, depending on how quickly I need to use the dough, I let it go through the first proofing in the fridge, anywhere from 12 to sometimes 48 hours. Then I take it out, let it come to room temperature before punching it back to disseminate the air and portioning it into the number of pizzas I will make. I loosely cover the dough balls with cling film and a kitchen towel to undergo the last proofing, which could be anywhere between 1 to 2 hours. Again, if you prefer to use the dough on the same day, or if you need to use the dough on the same day, you can have it ready within a matter of about 6 hours. So how that works out would be the first proofing would be about 3 to 4 hours, depending on how warm your environment is, and the second proofing would be about 1 to 2 hours. But anyway, back to what I'm doing now. I lost track a bit there. So our dough has already gone through the first proofing. Now here's a tip. I started using after making this video. Let's assume that you would like to use all 3 dough balls for pizza on the same day. After rolling them into a ball, do not put them on a floured surface. By that I mean don't use, your wheat flour. Instead, use semolina flour, fine semolina flour. Then cover with cling film and a kitchen cloth and let it proof before using it on the pizza. However, this tip is only for the pizza dough that you're going to use for pizza on the same day. And when you're rolling it out, you could sprinkle some wheat flour. As for the dough that you're going to freeze and the dough ball that you're going to use for the frozen pizza, you need to lay that on a lightly floured surface, so don't use semolina for this. And that's it. That's how you make pizza dough by hand. If you'd like some ideas on pizza toppings, here are a few. If you like it with tuna, spinach, perhaps ham and sweet corn. The links for each different pizza is linked above, so I hope you try them and I hope you like them. And now I'll show you how to use the pizza dough you just made to make frozen pizza for later. First thing you need to do is preheat the oven to 250 degrees Celsius. That's around 482 degrees Fahrenheit. Lightly flour your working surface and tip the dough onto it. I'm no pizzaiolo, so I'm still working on perfecting my stretches, so do what works for you to stretch out the dough for your toppings. Once the pizza dough is rolled out, get the parchment paper, and if you're not confident in picking up the pizza base without it ripping, you could just do what I do and cover the pizza base with a parchment paper, then flip it so that the parchment paper is on the bottom. Transfer it onto your oven rack and into the oven to pre-bake for no more than 2.5 minutes. What you should expect is for the dough to swell up into a dome. If this happens before the 2.5 minutes are done, just take it out. Let the pizza crust cool completely on a wire rack before moving on to the toppings. And here's what our pizza crust looks like after cooling down. It is very soft and flexible, almost like naan bread. The base should not be dry, otherwise you will end up with a cracker with toppings and not pizza. For this demonstration, I'm making a broccoli pizza. Yes, I had to go with a controversial topping. So start by spreading your pizza sauce, which can be in the form of a cream or a tomato sauce. There's a post on my blog about how to make pizza sauce, and if you should, I'll leave a link in the description below. So evenly spread the sauce, avoiding the edges if you can. Mostly when using cream, I try to avoid the edges because with the oil from the cream and cheese, it can get rather bubbly and flow all over the place, so the edges just give it a little barrier to keep all those delicious juices on the pizza and not all over your oven base. Now on to the toppings. I go with grated mozzarella cheese first, then top that with the broccoli. Then finish it with more grated mozzarella and fresh mozzarella for that extra moistness. And that is our pizza done. So go ahead and wrap the top with cling film, including the parchment paper. Then label and keep it in the freezer. In the event that you're worried of the pizza falling apart while you're wrapping it, what you could do is transfer it onto a flat surface that can fit in your freezer and let the pizza firm up, say for about an hour or so. Then proceed to wrap it as I have done. So this is what our pizza looks like from the freezer, and I will thaw mine in the microwave. I recommend that you thaw the pizza before baking. You could leave it in the fridge overnight if you know you'll want to eat it the next day, or pop it in the microwave for 10 minutes or so using the defrosting function. The pizza base is soft, and since it has been thawed, it should bake for a shorter time than it would when baked fresh off the freezer, which I do not recommend. Bake your pizza on the bottom rack for 7 minutes, rotating the baking tray or rack halfway through. Then move the rack to the middle just to brown the pizza a little bit. And this is our pizza ready for you to dig in. I must say I'm quite impressed with the dough this time around. I say that because I've been trying this out with various flours for a while, so this recipe seems to be a winner. For a frozen pizza, it's soft and not overly dry, as I have experience with a few frozen pizza brands. Come on, That looks quite decent considering that it's not a fresh pizza. The bottom is beautifully brown without being dry. So I hope you try and make your own frozen pizza to not only save you time, but some pocket change. And finally, let's dig into how to freeze your pizza dough for later. This is one of the dough balls that we had left to rise. And what we need to do now is prep it for freezing. Cut out some parchment paper and transfer the risen dough onto the parchment paper. Now this is easier for me to do because, well, I'm handling dough every week. But if you're not so confident to move it, what you could do is let the dough rise on parchment paper so that you don't need to move it. Then put that onto a flat surface and into the freezer for an hour. Take it out and cover with foil. Label it and leave it in the freezer for when you need it. And this is our frozen dough. What I do is leave it on the counter loosely covered to thaw. And this is what it looks like, thawed and ready to be used. So roll it up into a ball and let it proof for about an hour or so. I recommend that you place your dough ball on some fine semolina flour instead of your usual wheat flour. Yes, I did use wheat flour for this video. However, it's only after that I realized using fine semolina flour when you're rolling out your pizza dough yields for an amazing pizza. So you should try it. I'm sorry. Excuse the chickens in the background. I have tried to find the perfect time to do the video, but for some reason, it's just the chickens just won't stop today. So bear with me. Yes. So where were we? Let the dough proof covered with cling film, and once it's ready, roll it out. I decided to give you a change from the veg by using frankfurter for my toppings. I first layer an even spread of passata, well salted of course, then top that with grated mozzarella, followed by the frankfurter, then grated mozzarella, and I finish with the fresh mozzarella. I bake the pizza as usual at 250 degrees Celsius, that's about 482 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 8 minutes or until it seems ready. And this is a pizza which at first glance I could tell the browning was different from the frozen pizza and the pizza that was made with dough on the same day. But the other thing was the texture, and the pizza crust was very, very light. But let's take a step back to the dough for a bit, and here's where I hope to encourage you to make your pizza dough in advance. Something you need to know is that pizza dough that has gone through a long fermentation period, by that I mean 12 to 48 hours in advance. This seems to yield a crust that is lighter and more elastic and apparently better for digestion. And it also has a better flavor and texture. But I'll close off the ramble about pizza dough with just one tip. Okay, 2 tips, and that is to use high protein flour and try to make your pizza dough at least 12 hours in advance. So I hope you found this video to be useful. If you did, I hope you consider subscribing, liking, and sharing the content. I hope you have an amazing day wherever you are, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.